Good evening. I'm Admiral Scott Swift, the commander of U.S. Pacific Fleet. I've got a brief statement to make, and I'll take your questions following that statement. As most of you know, the guided missile destroyer USS John McCain was involved in a collision with a merchant vessel Alnick MC while underway east of the Straits of Malacca yesterday at 5:24 a.m. local time, Monday, August 21st. McCain was transiting to a routine port visit in Singapore when the collision occurred. Right now, we are still searching for our 10 missing sailors. That remains our focus. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the families of those sailors and the families of our sailors who are injured. Ships and aircraft from the Royal Malaysian Navy and Republic of Singapore Navy joined search efforts yesterday and continue to provide assistance along with aircraft from the USS America. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps divers joined the search today, assessing sealed compartments in damaged parts of the ship. The divers were able to locate some remains in those sealed compartments during their search today. Additionally, the Malaysian Navy has reported that they have located potential remains. They are working to confirm and identify those remains. As more information comes in, we will make it available. While the search and rescue efforts continue, I sincerely thank our Singapore partners, our Malaysia partners, and everyone who has responded with urgency, compassion, and tireless commitment. 4 of the 5 sailors injured were medically evacuated by a Singapore Navy helicopter to a hospital in Singapore for non-life-threatening injuries. The 5th injured sailor was transferred after John S. McCain arrived here in port. I visited with those sailors earlier today, and they are doing well. John S. McCain and America arrived in Changi Naval Base yesterday afternoon. While both ships are in Singapore, America is providing messing and berthing services to John S. McCain crew members and supporting damage control efforts on board, which are focused on dewatering the ship and restoring auxiliary systems. Our priority here in Singapore is taking care of the crew and their families, ensuring they have all the resources they need and are updated on the status of their ship and their shipmates. I visited with the crew today. They are tough and they are resilient. It is clear that their damage control efforts saved their ship and saved lives. I ask all of you to keep the affected sailors and their families in your thoughts and prayers, and respect their privacy. Families who are seeking information can call our crisis hotline, and we are continuing to provide updated information as soon as we get it via social media accounts and the 7th Fleet website. From my visit in John S. McCain today, I can tell you that she has sustained significant damage to her port side aft. The flooding was halted, but the extent of the damage is still being determined. We will conduct a thorough and full investigation into this collision, what occurred, what happened, and how it happened. As you know, this collision happened within 2 months of one another. The collision involving the U.S. Fitzgerald, which caused the death of 7 sailors, and earlier this year, there were 2 other incidences involving surface ships in the Western Pacific. One tragedy like this is one too many. And while each of these 4 events is unique, they cannot be viewed in isolation. I welcome the broad, comprehensive review announced by our Chief of Naval Operations. I talked this morning with Admiral Davidson on the phone and look forward to working with him as the senior surface warfare officer in the Navy to find out whether there is a common cause at the root of these events, and if so, how we solve that. We will implement the operational pause that sea announced across all fleets. and that will include all units in the Pacific and will be completed by August 28th. In addition, I have directed a second phase that will be focused on all surface ships deployed in the Pacific, including those forward deployed naval forces in Yokosuka and Sasebo. This second phase will be a deliberate reset for our ships, focused on a number of areas such as navigation, ship's mechanical systems, and bridge resource management. It will involve training and assessment by a team of experts with each ship and their watchstanders. And it will be phased in order to cover ships in port and on station at sea. We will take what we learn through each phase and apply it as we progress. Tomorrow I'll be traveling to Yokosuka for discussions with 7th Fleet leadership and engage with the families of the U.S. John S. McCain there. Make no mistake, our sailors in these ships are doing critical work at sea. And for more than 70 years, the U.S. Navy has helped guarantee the security and stability of the Western Pacific. All nations in this region and beyond have benefited from the resulting prosperity that their service has enabled. This work by our sailors is difficult, but it is incredibly important and enduring. We owe it to sailors that man 7th Fleet and their families to answer the questions that flow from the uncertainty of what happened, how could it happen, and what can be done to prevent such occurrences in the future. We owe it to each and every one of them to pursue answers to these questions and others that may be on their mind. We are absolutely committed to doing just that. Thank you, and with that, I look forward to answering your questions.
I know there's been a lot of talk about the possibility of a technical steering failure. Is there also any talk or possibility of some kind of sabotage or cyber attack?
So I don't want to comment on any specifics. The investigation is in its very earliest stages. I've heard of these reports of potential cyber attacks or cyber interference. We've seen no indications of that as of yet, but I think the Chief of Naval Operations was very clear that we are not taking any consideration off the table, and every scenario will be reviewed and investigated in detail.
Will there be any reform in the chain of command for the Navy?
I'm sorry?
Will there be reform in the command chain?
Will there be a reform in the command chain? Again, it's very early to make a determination of any actions, what might be taken. Our focus is on the 10 sailors that are missing, on their families, and of the crew of the USS John McCain.
Admiral, can I ask, with the Fitzgerald, both the commander of the ship and the deputy were asleep at the time of the incident. We've been talking to some families of sailors in San Diego today, and they talked of the Navy being understaffed and overworked, and too many demands, and not enough resources. Is there an issue of negligence here, or is it just that your men and women are exhausted from overwork?
I think, well, to your last question, I don't think that's the case at all. I was on McCain this morning looking at the eyes of those sailors, even after their heroic efforts yesterday. I didn't see exhaustion. I didn't see a crew that was taking a knee, so to speak. They are manning the USS John S. McCain. They are on their game. They own that ship. Damage control efforts continue. So that view is not a view that I see reflected to me by the 140,000 sailors that man the Pacific Fleet every day. As far as the question of negligence go, that will be a determination of the investigation. And along with the responsibility and authority comes accountability. And I think the record of the United States Navy is clear on that.
Admiral, can you confirm that 3 bodies were recovered at sea today?
We have a report from the Malaysians. We're grateful for the support that we continue to get from really across the region. We have a report that they have found a body. We're in the process of affecting the transfer of that body so we can start the identification process and determine whether it's one of the missing sailors or not.
So one body was found.
There's one body that has been reported by the Malaysian Navy has been found. We have discovered other bodies during the diving on McCain today, but it's premature to say how many and what the status of recovery of those bodies is.
And given the expanded area of search, are you confident that there may be survivors, given what has already happened?
So we're always hopeful that there's survivors. The SAR effort continues. I think the fruits of that effort are the fact that the Malaysians have reported recovering a body. So until we have exhausted any potential of recovering survivors or bodies, the search and rescue efforts will continue.
And with regard to where exactly the incident occurred, Singapore is saying it happened in its waters, Malaysia is saying in its waters. Can you tell us exactly where the incident occurred?
I think at this point that dialogue is a distraction. I would refer you to the Singapore government and Malaysian government. The focus of the United States Pacific Fleet, I think the CNO has been clear that the focus of the Navy is on our 10 missing sailors and their families.
Admiral, given what has happened to the number of ships in the 7th Fleet this year, are you concerned, given the number of ships out of commission, about the Pacific Fleet's ability to respond to threats in the region?
Not at all. We have a deep bench. As I mentioned earlier, I've got 140,000 sailors that report for duty in the Pacific Fleet every day. I have over 200 ships assigned to me. 60% of the United States Navy is assigned to the Pacific Fleet. So I am highly confident that we can respond to any guidance or direction that may come to me from Admiral Harris as the PACOM commander, and any guidance that may come to him from the President or the Secretary of Defense. Having said that, we're very concerned about these 4 incidences that you referred to. That concern is shared by the Chief of Naval Operations. It's reflected in the comprehensive review that he's called for, that Admiral Davidson will lead. And I look forward to working closely with Admiral Davidson in those efforts.
The Chinese press is now saying that some Chinese press are now commenting that the U.S. Navy is a hazard in the Asian waters. Do you have any comments about that?
I have seen those reports too, and I must say they're in stark contrast to every other voice I have heard that has commented on this tragedy of the USS John S. McCain. I have received messages of support, messages of condolences, messages of admiration at how hard this crew fought to save its ship. That message is out of step at the very least with all the other messages that I've received from my counterparts around the world. And it's absolutely out of step with the sailors that manned USS John S. McCain as I visited with them this morning.
So who is leading the rescue operation? Which body is leading the rescue operation? Is it Singapore or Malaysia leading the rescue operation?
Yeah, so I'm not going to get into a discussion of the leadership of the operations. We're grateful for the support from both the Malaysian Navy and the Singapore Navy. I will say that with the provision of a helicopter so early in the process, just after the collision, I'm grateful for the 4 sailors that were medevaced. I visited the hospital this afternoon. As I mentioned, the medical care has been extraordinary. I talked to the fleet surgeon, the Singapore fleet surgeon that is in charge of the sailors' care. And I think the Singapore government response has just been extraordinary. I'm very grateful for that.
Given the monitoring in the Strait of Singapore all the equipment and technology that we see around the vessels, could we assume that human error is probably, a good factor as well here?
I think it's very premature to jump to any conclusions. The danger in doing that is that we'll miss something that is significant. It's very early in the investigative process, but all of those questions will be part of that investigation.
And to confirm, where were the bodies found?
I'm not going to go into specific details. We have found remains within the John S. McCain. As I mentioned, the Malaysian Navy has found some remains as well. It is to be determined whether the remains that were discovered by the Malaysian Navy are one of the 10 missing sailors. But we look forward to starting that process of identifying those remains.
So you say remains, and just to confirm, these are human remains?
We don't even know that. All we know is that the Malaysian Navy has reported that they have found some remains. We're in the process of gaining possession of those remains so that we can assess exactly what they are.
Admiral, will you be able to now dry dock the ship here for repairs, or will it have to go somewhere else?
It is premature to discuss what the outcome will be. The Naval Sea Systems Command is sending a team to Changi here to do that assessment. They will assess the damage, and then part of the process of assessment is to determine what repairs are necessary. We're very grateful for the support that we receive from Singapore. There is a significant amount of maintenance that we do here in Singapore of all of our ships, but it's yet to be determined if the repair work is suitable for the facilities here in Singapore.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got time for one more.
How exactly did the actions of the sailor save lives? How exactly did the actions of the sailor save lives? How exactly did the actions of the sailor save lives?
Yeah, so it's a great story, and the question was for the broader audience: how did the actions of the sailors actually save lives? The damage to the ship is quite significant. The watertight integrity was compromised. Many of the spaces were flooded. Ships with flooding on one side become somewhat unstable. So the damage control efforts of the crew not only involved direct assistance to sailors that are injured, setting watertight boundaries, setting up shoring to support the interior structure of the ship. But the ship was initially had a list. It was righted based on the efforts of the sailors. And within an hour or two after the collision, the ship set flight quarters and began recovering helos to evacuate the sailors. They recovered and refueled helos that were supporting the SAR evolution. So John S. McCain was up and running as an operational ship almost immediately after the collision. It was quite extraordinary. Launching and recovering aircraft, participating in the SAR efforts as it steamed towards Changi, and at the same time fighting to control the flooding and the stability of the ship.
So how long do you expect the SAR operation to continue?
We will continue the SAR operation until there's a determination that the probability of discovering sailors is exhausted. Thank you very much for the opportunity to answer your questions and to share some time with you this evening.